All right, welcome to my YouTube video today. We're actually watching it live and technically not on YouTube yet. But my name is Melissa Tompkins Lewis. For those of you who don't know me, I'm so happy for everyone who's joined in our webinar where we have Tiffany Consalvo. She's going to talk about some really important things that you can do when you're creating and implementing new products and things that go with that. So I'm really excited. If you're not able to stay for the whole video, you're welcome to, or the whole webinar, you're welcome to sign off and watch it again. I will put it on the YouTube channel a little bit later today. But I'm very excited to have Tiffany here with us today. And in case I forgot to say, I am the owner of South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions, and my YouTube channel is at South Coast Vet Manage 263. I think that's the number. I always forget it. So anyway, but I'd like to introduce Tiffany today to talk to you about some pioneering progress and unveiling new products in veterinary medicine. So Tiffany, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. So my name is Tiffany Consalvo. I started my career in vet med probably 20 plus years ago. I don't want to age myself too much there, but so I started there. I started in the kennel. I got the opportunity to work as a CSR, as a vet assistant. So really got to see the practice from a lot of different angles, which was really cool. Fell in love with management. I got asked to do like some special projects with the billing and got my kind of taste of what management might be like. And so when I graduated from Purdue University, I went ahead and accepted my first job as a hospital manager. And then since then, I've spent time working remotely, consulting, doing some webinars. I had the majority of my time I spent the last probably 12 years or so with a great partnership at a local small animal GP practice. And we went from probably, I think, 12 employees up to about 40 employees and went through a renovation. Just really great. So it was a great opportunity to really take a small practice and grow it and develop it. And I don't know if anybody's ever done a renovation before, but the decision fatigue is real. We got the opportunity to actually put on an addition and then build out a new space, move into one, move into the other, and then unveil. And then the pandemic hit and we kicked everybody out. So it was a great experience. We went through all of the things. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit, though, about unveiling new products or services really into your practice. And one of the reasons I wanted to focus on this is because love inventory, but this kind of connects inventory, marketing, your hospital's target market, your brand, who you are, all in one, because it's important for us to do this right. And so we'll get into kind of the steps in place. Also really laid back. So if you have questions, ask along the way. It's for you guys. So whatever you guys have questions about, or if you want me to stop, just raise your hand, throw it in the chat, or just unmute yourself and ask the question. Totally fine. So we'll jump in. So why do we launch new products in our practice? And I think one of the things that you want to think about is we do it to advance care. So it might be advancing new medicine for our patients. It could be for us to have that competitive advantage with our neighbor down the street. I always think about whether or not if I'm selling the exact same things as all of the practices are around me, what is that going to differentiate? How am I going to differentiate myself from that so that I have a little bit more of a competitive advantage when it comes to that? When we think about new advancements in treatment and care, when I first started in vet med, we had steroids for skin issues, or we sent them to specialists, but now we have things like Cytopoint and Apoquel. So had we not added those to our repertoire of products that we have at our practice, we would be kind of behind the curve when it comes to that. So different reasons, also financial growth. So if you're trying to increase your revenue, I always think you want to look at your profit centers. And a profit center is really like a little mini business within. So if you have vaccines as a profit center, you have revenue and expenses for that. If you have any profit centers within your practice that are not developing, you might want to eliminate them so that you can grow financially or add something else in. And so we're going to talk about products and services today that kind of are how to launch them correctly in the practice so that you can stay competitive and enhance the business that you guys have for your practice. So one of the things that really takes this home for me is I worked with a client. He's a great individual. I love him dearly. He also likes to get a good deal. And so he's really proud of himself when he spends a lot of time with his vendors or his reps to get a really good deal on a bulk product item. And he gets these really good really good deals where the profit margins for this product is going to be great. And so I came into his hospital and he was excited to tell me about a new flea and tick product that he was able to get in this practice and the profit margin he was going to make on this item. And so I asked him, I said, "Oh, well, what did you get rid of?" And he's like, "I didn't get rid of anything. I want to have any item that a client asks for." And I was like, "Oh, okay, here we go." So we have a lot of money tied up into our flea tick products at this practice. When I went downstairs, though, to talk to the staff, I noticed that I was asking them questions about the new flea and tick product. Most of them didn't know that they got a new product. And so I asked one of the doctors about the product, and they're like, "Oh, you know what? I've heard of it, and I kind of like it, but at the same time, I don't know much about it. And the only thing I've heard is some of the negative side effects. So I'll probably just stick to what I have." And so when I left the visit, I was kind of thinking to myself, man, we could have done that so much better for him so that he could actually go ahead and promote that product in his hospital. And so I liked when I followed back up with him about a month later, I was asking him about that product. He was like, "Well, I don't think the clients really liked it." My thought is the clients probably didn't get a consistent experience with that product. They probably didn't have the chance to like it or dislike it. And unfortunately, that profit margin that he was so proud that he got took his time away from him really spending time in an exam room making money. And two, it was not the profit margin that he actually received because he had to send it back. And so, I think that we could have done that a lot better. And that got me thinking about we should probably create some education around how to do this a little bit better. So, some of the consequences for unveiling products or services in your practice unsuccessfully. Normally, I would ask you guys this out loud, but we're going to jump to them because we can get a lot of failed things. One of the things is clients are not compliant. So, when I think through all of the products at that practice that they had, when I get an inconsistent message from a CSR to a doctor to a technician, and especially with flea tick, if you say, "Hey, why do you recommend whatever?" and everybody has a different answer, then your clients are going to kind of be like, maybe I'll go home and do my own research. You don't become that sense of authority for them. And when you're not the sense of authority for them, then they're going to look for another source of truth. And so you can kind of lose their trust. And that could, if we go really downhill, have a reputation for your practice that fails. And so I want us to be really consistent with the way that we approach the education around it, how we want to sell a product, or what we want to do for team training or doctors to get on board with selling that product. So I feel like we lost all three in that story that I kind of told you. And that's probably why we weren't successful when we launched that product. The other thing is there's developmental cost into that product as well. So I think about all of the time that this doctor spent trying to negotiate that deal, ordering the product, getting it in, setting it up in a system. I lost all of that, especially if we didn't do it correctly and it didn't soar at the practice. So we've got that going on. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with disgruntled clients, but if I'm getting this inconsistent message from a employee standpoint, I get all of these clients kind of asking more information and they're kind of getting disgruntled from it. That can really decrease your employees' morale as well. So I feel like there's a lot of things there. Over time, when your clients get frustrated, it can be really difficult for you to deal with them. So. But never fear. I think Henry Ford said it really well when he said failure is simply the opportunity for us to begin again, this time just more intelligently. And so I agree with that. I think that we can launch products and services in our practices a lot better. And so today we're going to kind of go through probably about six steps on how to improve that. So one of the things I like to take a step back, though, is persuasion. So we persuade our team members all of the time in our practices, and we persuade them to come in on time. We persuade them on how we want them to talk to our clients. We persuade them on how they create estimates. I mean, we are actually persuading them to do lots of things. And so some of the things that we have to do for us to persuade them, train them, coach them, is to attune to them. So what are they going through? And you can do that in a lot of different ways, but some ways are just shadowing your doctors. What challenges are they facing in the exam rooms? Shadow your technicians. What does their day look like? Are they on their feet all day? Do they have places to stop? Are they getting their breaks? You know, what is going on with them? Same thing with your CSRs. Sit in the lobby, take a peek. You know, what's their day look like? You know, you can record some phone calls. What are they dealing with on the phone as well? That's going to help you attune to what they're going through every single day so that you can kind of develop these operations and tasks that take work off of them or help them so that they can set them up for success in their practice. And so when we think about new products or services, I think I need them to be educated. I need them to know what to say. I need to know what all challenges they're going to face when they have that product out there for their team. And that's important so that when I develop these operations for them, that I can help persuade them. So
I
we're going to do a little.
I love that, Tiffany, because I think it's so important. You get the buy-in by talking to them about what do they see as a barrier, or, what a lot of it's education. Sometimes it's just a new thing, or they don't have time to do it because they've got all this other stuff. So I absolutely love
Mhm.
that. Taking the time to do that
Yeah.
is so important.
Yeah, we're going to do it. This is more fun in person, but we are going to do a little activity because I want to see where you guys are coming from when it comes to persuasion. So I don't want you to overthink it, and we'll just do this together. But I want you to identify your dominant hand. So are you right-handed or left-handed? And then I want you to snap 5 times really quickly with that hand. So I'm right-handed, so I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I want you to take your pointer finger and draw a capital E on your forehead. So once you're done with that, we'll talk about what that means. So you could have drawn that E facing yourself so that you could read it, or facing out towards others. And so if you drew it facing you, you're more in tuned with taking your own perspective. So it might take you a little bit to get into the mindset of your team. And you might want to, before you launch any product, go downstairs and or go into your office and kind of see what's happening, because it's going to be harder for you to attune with them naturally. If you drew that E facing out, you naturally attune to the perspective of others. So that might not be as hard for you to adapt. So it's just a fun little exercise to kind of see what's your natural tendencies. And then you can kind of go from there with what you need to do to kind of create your operations for your team. So why is it important? I feel like we've kind of talked about persuasion, but when we're talking about attuning to your team and making sure that you're developing things that speak to the challenges that they will face, it's important for us to kind of put ourselves in their shoes. And so I think it's really important. It's also one of those things when I drew my E, it was pointing towards me, and I was like, oh crap, I have to really work on this when I am developing things for others. And so it was just a nice little way for us to see what our starting point is. So let's talk about some of the steps that we can put in place so that we launch products a little bit better in our practices, and we're not like the example that I shared from the story. We want to make sure that it's a long process. This takes time. This isn't something that we're going to do in a day. So when your doctor comes to you and says, "Hey, go ahead and buy this new product," you can say, "Whew, let's hold on. Let's take our time so that we can do this correctly, so that we can sell this product in our practice. It gets to the pets that it's supposed to get to, and our team feels comfortable doing it." And so we want to do some market research. We also are going to pick out our products and suppliers. There's an inventory component to this, kind of like we talked about earlier, is we've got to make sure the inventory is right. Staff training, super important. We also want to market it and provide some education to our clients. And then it's not over once that's done, is we want to get some feedback and monitor the progress. So those are kind of the 6 steps that I think go into launching a product. Being in practice, though, I know early on in my career, I didn't do any of these steps. And so it was more like, oh, you want me to get this new product for you? Sure, let me put it into the system, let me get it out there, and then let me go around and tell everybody that it's here. And that was kind of our system. And throughout the years, I've kind of developed this system and saw how much it improves the process and the outcome. So let's break these down so you guys can go through them too. So what is market research? So market research is really when we're going to be gathering information about the product, about the service that we're going to bring in. We're going to want to analyze data. So we're going to get data from our customers. If you are in your practice and you have some clients that you can create focus groups with, I love that. I think they're the biggest tell on how something is going to go. So we used to have about 5 clients that we worked with regularly that we had a really good relationship with. They would give us honest feedback about things, and we would reward them with maybe some free product or a credit on their account for something. But we got a lot of information, really good insights from them about how we were doing and what they thought about some of the new products and services that we were offering. Also, what are your competitors doing? We want to think through from a standpoint of like, you don't always want to do the same things over and over and over. And if you're not growing and developing and staying up to date with the new technology, then we might be obsolete. And so we don't want to be obsolete, and we want to kind of see what our competitors are doing. We also want to market. We want to get into the market and see what's out there, what's new. There's tons of new ideas. I work with a company out of California sometimes, and they're creating new ways for us to get forms out to our clients and get the information back and right into our PIMS. So there's ways to make us more efficient in the workplace. We have new marketing companies out there like Videos that are creating really cool little videos for us. So lots of cool things out there. So you want to get out in the market and see what's happening. So where do we get some of our market research? I think one of the easiest ways before we would go out to a conference or a trade show, I would kind of meet with my leadership team and was like, okay, what are on our goals list for the next 6 to 12 months? And then we would say, while you're at the conference, I want you to talk to this person, and this person, and then bring back the information. It's just a really good way to get into those vendor centers and go hit up the people that you need to, because they're all in the same place at the same time, ready to talk to you. I did this with our software. We were looking at changing software in a practice, and I was able to hit 3 vendors, spend some time with them at a conference, and it was really a good use of my time at the conference, versus being at the hospital and you're dealing with all the day-to-day activities of the practice and trying to get into the brain of, okay, now I got to go and actually research these companies here. Sometimes it's a little harder when you're at a conference or a trade show. That can be kind of the mindset that you go there with, and so it's a little bit easier to gather that information. Also, when we get all of those great magazines delivered to us, I think journals and publications, a lot more online, just things like Melissa's, YouTube channel, there's tons of information there. So I feel like I used to have a stack of, magazines that I never got to. And I would actually put in my calendar schedule time in my calendar just to go look at stuff so I didn't get too far behind. I think it's important as leaders for us to stay up to date on our marketing. You still have a stack? Yes, me too. I still try, but I schedule the time in my calendar because it is super important for us to look through that. If you're leading a practice and you're not staying on top of what's going on out there, that's shame on us, because that's part of what we're supposed to do in our practice. Not just take care of the day-to-day interactions that are happening at our hospital, but actually grow and develop our hospitals as well. So that can be a really good thing. Our vendor reps are an excellent source of information as well. You can develop really, really good relationships with them. One of the things I did though is I kind of scheduled my days or my weeks where Monday I did a lot of my finance things because payroll was due on Monday. So that's what I kind of tried to stick to. Tuesday, I went into HR. Wednesday is when I did all of my inventory. And so what I just did was created a time slot for vendor reps. And so everybody got to know this is the day that we meet. I was able to schedule those appointments. That my front desk was not bombarded. And if a new vendor rep came in, they said she does that on Wednesdays. She'd be happy to see you, just schedule some time. They felt empowered and they didn't have to ask me all the time or send people to my voicemail that then I had to listen to. So it was just kind of nice to have that pre-standing time for them. And then you're not constantly interrupted, because we get interrupted and then it takes us an hour or so to refocus back on whatever material it was. So that's a good way for you to kind of organize your day or your shift. A new thing that's growing is social media groups. So I feel like when we talk about Facebook groups, there's a moms group for veterinarians. And I feel like there is tons of information that goes out there. They have a really good network to share. A lot of my medical directors will say, oh, I'll just ask this group. So that's becoming now a source of truth and a really good space for them to ask questions about things that's going on in the industry. Ben has a great place too for you guys to kind of look at and see what's going on. So there's a lot of good research, but the important part is if you're bringing something new into your practice is to look at those sources for some information on those products before you bring them in. The other thing is, who is your target market? So this thing gets missed, but like when you create your business and you have your purpose, and then you're going to have a segment of the market that comes to your business or the people that you want to attract to come to your business. And so think about a practice that is focused on holistic medication or holistic medicine. They're going to have a certain clientele or target market, a segment of that community that they are targeting to come into their practice for their products and services. And sometimes that gets missed. And so I feel like we bring in products and services sometimes that don't align with our purpose. And so we've kind of misaligned who we are with who we are trying to attract. And we don't always bring the right things in. I worked with a client that was down in Cape May, and it's an older community, a lot of seniors that live there. And so I was working with them. We thought about, my natural marketing strategies would be like, ooh, we need an app, we need online booking. That wasn't their clientele. So it would have been not a really good use of our time or our resources if we had done that. I mean, they literally had a assisted living van that would drop clients off. So, I mean, their market is they're not Ubering to the practice. They're not driving to the practice. Like they are a different segment of the market. So get to know who is in your community. There's really good resources for that. I have a link I can share later for you to kind of look up your community and see who's coming in and out of that for you to get a better idea. And it even breaks down kind of their ancillary income. It kind of gives you a idea of who that is. But I also want you to say, like, who do you want? Do you want a lot of cat clients? Do you want a lot of dog clients? Do you want to be fear-free? Do you want to be known for your customer service? Like, who do you actually want to come in? And then think about what products that you want to bring in. And there's some companies that do that pretty well, I think, that drive this point home. So when we think about Whole Foods, when you go into Whole Foods, you're not expecting to have the cheapest products in in that building. You're expecting to have foods that are organic and healthy and centered around that kind of market. And so same thing in your practice. You want to think about that. Some people are very price conscious, but maybe that's the market that they are targeting to. That's not all markets. And so if we think about McDonald's, on the other hand, though, we want cheap, affordable, convenient food. I'm not going to have a Wagyu burger probably that comes out of McDonald's, right? Because it doesn't fit their target market. They couldn't get the price point where they need to be for that kind of product. So think about what your target market is before you start bringing those in. Starbucks has done a really good job too of when they first came out, recycling was a really big thing for them. So all of their buildings had like this recycled material on their back walls. Their cups were certain materials, that kind of thing. They also wanted you to be somebody that came in and worked and drank coffee and continued to stay in their locations. And so if you walked in, you would see these long tables. They would have lots of power sources, and they would have like Wi-Fi would be easily available. They wanted you to stay there and keep drinking coffee. It wasn't like drive up and leave. However, I would say over the last couple of years, they are changing their target market. You see them now in grocery stores. You see them now with these pink drinks and funky things that are kind of targeted to a different market. So I bring them up because whoever you picked before doesn't mean who you have to stay with. And so if the business or your community is changing and you need to change kind of your target market and rethink your purpose of what you're trying to accomplish at your practice, you're not stuck. So don't feel like you've like, well, the previous owner picked it. Now I'm the new medical director and practice manager, and we have a different vision. That's okay. You just guys, you have to reinvent yourself, and that's all right. Sometimes it's needed. So think through that.
Tiffany, do you have a tips? And you may talk about this in a little bit, but tips for people who have a practice owner or medical director who's not willing to look at today's changes that might be necessary? You know what I mean? Like they're stuck in the 1980s and now it's 2024. Do you have like a way that you would recommend that you talk to them?
Wow, that's a trick question. I feel like,
Right.
no, I think really honestly, it's just kind of, one of the things I would probably do is the ESRI kind of dashboard has a way for you to put in your guys's zip code. And when you do, it pops out the population of people that come into that area. And so I would probably start there. So if you're meeting some resistance, know that they built this and this is their baby and their dream and their vision. But if your community has changed, it's important that you show that to your owner. hey, we're not in the market share anymore. We're not gathering what we need. Here's some data to back that up. Like, here's the new clients that are coming in. So we also have different age groups. I mean, we could go really down the marketing path here, but there's, different age groups that are coming into the practice. We could look and get some data on who's actually coming in. And that's going to change how you market and what you offer. And so I would start with some of those facts to start to have the conversation with those owners and know it's going to be a slow process to kind of get them brought around. It's not going to be something like this. And then think about asking them, like, what's our driver? What's our purpose here? What are we trying to accomplish? And set that mission so that we can get there. A mission is almost like a SMART goal, in my opinion, where we write them like a SMART goal so we get closer to that purpose. And then we might need to rewrite the mission in 5 to 10 years to get us closer and closer to that purpose, or we have to re-identify ourselves. So I would probably start with that, with facts a little bit, and open-ended questions to kind of get the conversation started, and then not be so frustrated when it didn't happen immediately, because that's a whole different mindset. So when we're talking about product selection, I used flea tick because we have so many in our industry. It just seems to be the right one to choose. And this is what I'm thinking when we're doing product selection. Sometimes they come and you're like, here's the product we have, and there's not anything else that is like it in the market. So that would be kind of a new product. If it's a product, though, you're kind of like, we've had Frontline Plus and we're considering changing over to something else, I would want to take about 4 or 5 products and kind of create a pros and cons or comparison list. And once you have that, I would kind of just look like, what's the duration? What's the form? Is it chewable? Is it topical? Kind of get some comparison data for that information. And then I'm going to pop it over to my doctors. So we want to get buy-in from any new products that you're going to bring into the practice that you expect your veterinarians to use on a regular. And so you want to get some buy-in from them. So ask their opinion. Say, hey, narrow down this. We have a list of 5. We want to narrow it down to 2 to 3. And I want to know what you guys feel is the most appropriate for our clientele. And then you can bring in your vendors to have those vendor meetings and really get into conversations about the product itself. And we can narrow it down even further. I think reviewing those results, we used to send around kind of a survey to the doctors. I think you could do that electronically now. I just had a practice that's sent electronically, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. It's like a little survey. And so the doctors would be able to kind of select the products that they liked, and then you guys can have a conversation, narrow that down with some research or in-practice research for them. Not all products are going to have to go through the veterinarians like that, but I would say you get more buy-on, especially in a multi-doctor practice. And if we're thinking about narrowing your product selection for flea tick down to your A and B selection in the practice, you want to get buy-in from them so that they're selling it, since it's a preventative care product. So not everything's going to fit in that same bubble, but I would say for preventative care, I'd want them to have that consistent message to the clients. So the next thing you're going to think about is supplier selection. And so when it comes down to supplier selection, there's a lot of things to consider. Is it a manufacturer, somebody that actually makes the products themselves and sells it, or is it a distributor where they basically distribute lots of different manufacturers from one location? So Patterson, Midwest, Covetrus, they would be distributors. Zoetis, BI, they're going to be manufacturers. And so there's pros and cons to both when it comes to buying directly from a manufacturer or buying through distribution. I would say the biggest difference that you're going to find is for privately owned practices, you're going to want to join a buying group. And a buying group is basically where you have people that pay a fee to be together. So now if I have $1 million practice, $1 million practice, $1 million practice, I can join a group, and now I have the buying power of $3 million like $3 million of revenue to create a deal with these different vendors to get the best deals for me. As $1 million practice, I don't have the buying power of that a $3 million hospital does, and so on. So those larger buying groups like VMG, VSG, they are great because they're able to negotiate those deals at a larger level so that we know that we are getting the best prices. If you're involved with a corporation, a lot of times the corporations own multiple practices, so they're able to negotiate those deals by themselves, or they might be a part of a buying group as well. So just knowing where you get the best deal is probably one of the biggest reasons why you would pick one or the other. But I would say beyond the deal, if you have two products where it's like they're going to be similarly priced at both locations, but you have a rep that is outstanding. This is the rep that when you run out of vaccines, you can call them and they're like, yep, I'll go get them for you. I'll bring them to your practice. There's a relationship there. And that can be huge when it comes to making sure that you have education. I know we partnered really well with some vendors. With Zoetis, and Zoetis brought us things to our practice that I couldn't have brought in by myself when it came to education or some of the staff events that we were able to do. It was really great to have a great partner like that. They also brought us vaccines when we were out, or if something was going on back order, they would call me and say, hey, you might want to stock up. This is going to be on back order for a couple months. So those relationships really have a lot of value as well. And then we get into inventory management. So the first question I always ask, like I did in my story example, is it an addition to our practice or is it a replacement? And so if it's a replacement, that's great. I'm going to replace the dollars that I usually spend on one item for this item. Not that big of a deal. I'm going to make sure it's priced appropriately in the system so that my profit margin is the same. If it's an addition, though, that's extra resources that I'm going to have to allocate to this additional product. So I'm going to want to make sure that it's actually bringing in the revenue. And that's where it gets really, really important that we go through all these steps that we're talking about today so that that product launches correctly. If not, I'm just going to be spending more money on that inventory, but not getting the revenue that I expected. And my cost of goods is going to increase that percentage of my revenue, which means the profitability of the practice is not going to be as good. So I would ask that question, some examples of replace or addition. Librela was brand new to the market. So if that was a product that you brought in, that would be a addition to the products that you offer. If it was Trio, Simparica Trio, and it was replacing Frontline Plus, that's kind of a replacement product. So that's the difference. The other thing to consider is, so we've got this new product we're bringing in. How am I going to price it? So I like to ask myself a few questions. Is this a shopped item or is this a non-shopped item? So let's think back to flea and tick because it's a very easy example. Most of the time it's shopped, and shopped items tend to be items that are purchased every month or consistently. And so they hit your monthly budget. Things that hit your monthly budget are going to be stuff you're going to be more conscious about and you're going to want to get the best deal on. And so we want to think through that when we are thinking about pricing those items that are considered shopped or monthly items. So NSAIDs, prevention, monthly Apoquil, those kinds of things we're going to be more shopped. The other thing to consider is, do my doctors make production on that item or not? And this comes into play a lot when you have kind of those hefty prices for injectable medication. And sometimes those medications cost us a lot for practice, and we want to be sensitive to what we charge. They also could be considered shopped because they're used on a monthly repeating basis for the pet. And the price points and the things that are provided to us are sometimes like a $25 per injection type of fee. So you're guaranteed to make $25, which is fine. Just consider, do I pay my doctor's production on that item or not? I've seen a lot of practices that I've worked with that follow the recommendations to do a $25 charge on top of the cost of the product to keep the price point low for the clients, but then they didn't remove it from the way that they go ahead and pay veterinarians production. So every time they sold that product, they were actually losing money. So we want to make sure that we are looking at the net profit to the practice when we're pricing things, and we kind of stay in a market that makes sense for both the practice, the patient, and the doctors. The other thing is invoice item setup. So we want to be able to find this product. So when we're putting it into the system, we want to make sure that we've got the categories right. And the main thing with this would be is just to create a policy or procedure for your practice. Because what happens is, if I have an inventory manager that decides that they are going to name things based on their product name, and this person that jumped in and added the item is going to do a generic name. I might have Rimadyl, Carprofen, I might have all of these different items in my PIMS, and I don't know which one is the right item to use when I'm charging out the client. And I don't know if it's pulling out the inventory on the back end, and I don't know if the profit margins are set up correctly in the system. So just know your system. They all work a little bit differently, but you want to make sure that they're set up. Also, the AHA chart of accounts is a great resource if you're like, I'm not sure where to put this item. You know, is it a vaccines? Go very easily under vaccines. Is it flea tick? Do I have the classifications in my PIMS set up properly so that the revenue when I sell that product is going into the right category? And I can actually look at reports and see what income I have in each one of those categories. So setting it up properly is really important. I would say the biggest thing is just to know your PIMS, write down your expectations, because it's probably not always going to be you that's actually setting that up in your system. And so if it's not you, we want it to be done still consistently. And so just having kind of that training for your inventory or a reference for them anytime a new product comes in is really, really important. So now let's jump into staff training. We kind of talked about market, our target market, our inventory. Now we're on to our staff training. Is we want to schedule kind of a kickoff meeting. And so we want to make sure that the whole team understands the benefits of this new product. If it's a replacement product, is like, why are we switching from this to this? And a lot of times you'll have vendors come in or reps come in and do the education. And what I used to do is work with them to make sure that it's tailored to your team. Instead of being like, oh, I scheduled my staff meeting, check. I have a rep that's going to talk about this product, check. And then that's it. It's off my list. I know we're busy, but we want the time to be effective. And staff training costs a lot of money. And so if I have all of my team there and their hourly rate is this, and my doctors are not making revenue, there's a big cost to have my whole staff in that training. So I want to make sure it's effective. So kind of work with your rep to make sure if you're not actually doing the education or your doctors aren't doing the education, make sure it speaks to everybody. I want to invite my CSRs, my technicians, and my doctors to this meeting. I want them to know this, this, and this. I want you to speak to the CSRs from where they're going to be talking to the clients and what our expectations are, the technicians and the doctors kind of hit all three so they understand the benefits of bringing this product into the hospital. And we can talk about side effects. Then you can have some time for them to answer questions. They can talk to you about any pain points that they think they'll hit with the clients. Any resistance, we can kind of work through all of those things together. But I think there needs to be some more time spent working with your reps to make sure that the meeting goes off how you want versus just letting them come in and train on their new product. So work with them to kind of set that up. The other thing we want to talk about is hands-on demonstration. So people learn more by getting their hands on there, visually seeing it. Most people aren't just an auditory learner. So a lot of times we'll have a PowerPoint. We'll also have some videos in there. I like to, even if you're bringing in a new product, bring the package, let them see it, let them pass it around, let them feel it, let it open them up, let them look at the application. The more they know about that product, the more they're going to be able to talk about that product to somebody else. Even if it's a pill, you can show them it's a chewable tablet. You can break it in half or it's scored. Just things so they can get more familiar with the product can be really, really helpful. This is the part I failed at and did not do for many years. And when I started doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. So test their knowledge. So we have these great lunch and learns. We got free lunch. We got the education. And then we sent them downstairs. And we said, okay, go on. You know it. It's coming on this day. You'll be ready. And it was never the case, right? Like they got down there, they were confused. They didn't know what the expectations are for each department. And I set them up for failure in those regards. So test them. If the CSRs are to know XYZ about the product, test them afterwards. Hey, what's the product name? What are the most common side effects? What are you going to get? What's the price of it? Like whatever you want the CSRs to know about that product, make sure you test them afterwards. Same thing with your technicians and your doctors. Like, how are you going to talk to the client about this new product? What are you going to say to them? What are you going to say about switching them over? You know, all of the things. Or if it's a new product, how are you going to introduce it? Because I remember some of the new injectable medication that came out for cats. You know, how do we identify these cats? How do we market to these cats? You know, how do we talk to clients about getting them in for these injections? So just have a better understanding by testing the knowledge to make sure that they pass, because this is now an expectation of their job that they'll know how to talk to our clients about these products. And that sometimes is missed. So this has been huge and making it a little bit better for, I guess, increasing the success rate is what that's done. Then you want to go ahead and end with a protocol. So the other thing that I often left out until I learned a little bit more was we had this great meeting. We talked about the product, and then we all left. And then some people were like, "Yep, we're starting this now. It's already downstairs." Some people are like, I don't know when we're starting it. Did we start?" They come back and say, "Hey, when does that come?" So they're kind of confused. So have a protocol sheet with you and identify a few things. Identify when you're going to launch it. Identify who they can go to on the floor with questions when you're not around. Go ahead and get into the why. Like, why are we changing that? Get into what's changing. So why we're changing it is it's a more effective product. It has better efficacy. It's oral. It's not topical or greasy, whatever you're going to say in the why. What is changing is going to be, we used to sell this product. Now we sell this product. How will be the steps that they need to take at the practice level to make sure that they sell that product appropriately. Whether you say use this invoice item in the PIMS or this group or this way or this provider code so it gets charged under the right doctor, spell it out so that you can utilize this protocol as training for your new staff that come in. I think that's super important. Here is just a little example. So you could put the date of the meeting, and this is past, but June 13th of 2024. You can put the launch date is going to be the following Monday. I'm the change champion. So if you have any questions about that on the floor, I'm the person that can help you guide you. So you can have a couple of people. That also doesn't have to always be the leader or the manager. That could be just these people are really excited about the product. They know a lot about it, and they're happy to answer questions. Make sure you talk to those people. Make sure they know they're the champion on this product. So a lot of times you'll bring them into the product research stage, or after the product's selected, maybe they have a few extra meetings with the vendors. So they're aware of the change and that they have all the knowledge that they need. Sometimes what happens though is the team leader that is downstairs becomes the champion automatically, but they don't have all the information that they need. That can be super confusing for them. That also creates this distrust between the employee and the manager. So just be careful with that. Make sure whoever's on that champion list is actually aware and knowledgeable. And again, this is kind of the why we put in there and the what. And then this is kind of the how. So invoice item group was created. It'll auto select based on the patient's weight. This is how you would make the estimates. This is what the technicians and doctors are expected to do. So that's just kind of an example for you of what I would say is a protocol form that we would create. Then you can save those protocols, whether you have Google Docs or you have Dropbox or you guys use Slack and you have a protocol channel. Either way, but it becomes a living, breathing training document for reference later. And as a leader, it becomes something that you can hold somebody accountable to. Hey, we've had this protocol out. We went through the training. This is the expectation. You kind of have that to fall back on too if things are not happening on the other end. So you've got a twofold. Role play also super awkward sometimes, but really effective. So if you have a new product and you want to get everybody together, CSR, doctor, technician, we're launching this new product. Let's just walk through it. Let's spend some time downstairs. Let's go through questions. Let's talk through role play about the product. Let's do all the things that you would do with a client, because the more comfortable they are with something, the better it's going to go with the client. And I always say, I hate to practice in front of our clients. So the more practice that we can have so that we're really good in front of our clients, the better it is. And so I would say role play whenever you can. Get your team into role play. Like, it takes a bit, and I know that it people are like, no, I don't like it, or I'm shy, or that's uncomfortable. But I'm like, you're role playing every single day in front of the client. So us doing it with each other is no different than what you're going to be expected to do with a client. And I need you to get over that so you can get good. And that's okay. For you to be a little uncomfortable, because it is uncomfortable. But like, taking that seriously and making role play a part of your practice can be really, really effective so that you're good in front of your clients. Now let's talk about marketing. So we've got through setting it up in inventory. We've talked about which product we're going to use, which supplier we're going to use. We've got our training for our staff. We're ready to go. Now, what are we going to do to market it? One of the things and tools that has just made life so much easier is Canva. And so Canva is a way for you to set up an online account. Where I did is I put in my logo, it picks my brand colors. I can go ahead and kind of create little ads that look professional and share them out to social media for some education. You can also pre-schedule all of your posts so that you can create things in advance. When I was talking about Tuesday being kind of my marketing day, and what I would do is that's when I would. So 4 times out of the month, I would spend time to make my marketing items for the following month, or kind of keep myself ahead of things if we were making videos, if we were, bulk items, so bulk and doing all of our marketing at once. So it was done in advance and I wasn't trying to do it the day of, except for those exciting things that were happening at the practice. That really saves you that time. But we're going to want to do some branding for our new products. This is like this multimodal approach to get in front of our clients. So we have our team saying something in the practice. Now we have also our online messaging saying the same things. Some other marketing ideas that you guys can do. I think on the last one, we talked about like you could do some QR codes in your exam room. So if you have like a new product, I had a practice do this. They had a new product that they launched. They had put a little QR code there on the framed the picture and hung it on the wall. And then they just would tell the clients to just scan that when they took the pet back to go do a nail trim or do a service. And when they scan that, they would see a little video about the new product. They would come back into the room and say, oh, okay, so what did you think about that video? And that was a way for them to educate the clients, kind of take up that time while the team was out of the room giving the services to the pet. And so they were using that instead of allowing the client to just sit there with no education, and just sit there, wait for the pet to come back. So that's a good way for them to use that. I thought that was a pretty effective way to market the product while not being there. You can also ask them to do a little survey afterwards too with that same thing. You can have brochures. So if we're launching a new product, you can ask your vendor for those brochures, put them in every single one of your exam rooms and then hand them out. So that just kind of is a visual right by your computer that, oh, don't forget to talk about this product. Because again, we're changing habits for our team as well. So sometimes we have to give them a little extra visuals about that product while you're, getting in that launching stage. The other thing I don't think that I just mentioned is if it's a product that you can give samples out, I think it's great to give samples out to your staff in advance so that they can try the product out and or try the service out in advance. And the more that they get to use it, they can talk about their personal experience with it. That really goes a long way with the clients as well. Staff surveys, client surveys, get some feedback. How is it going? So we've launched the product, we're using it. Like, what are the challenges that the staff is facing? What are the challenges that the clients are facing? Do they love it? Do they hate it? You want to know. Like, we don't want to just not be like, wow, sales fell off. I guess that they didn't like it. Go ahead and ask them. Ask them for some feedback. Most people are really willing to give that to you. Some other ways to get feedback as a manager, you could go through and just get an invoice list of all of the items that were sold and then pick 4 or 5 people and call them and ask them. And maybe you give them a little gift card for their time. Maybe you give them something for doing the feedback with you. But that can be a really good way to get that feedback. You can ask for it on social media. Only hesitation that I have for that is if it's a bad experience, it could go wild and then you may not be able to stop it. So I like the follow-up calls first and then kind of figuring that out if it's a positive or negative thing with the clients before we go out to social media for that and ask for all of the feedback. Videos are also a good thing. I saw with Silencia, they did some really before and after videos, and we were able to post that online with clients. That gets a lot of good press on there too, and people are more willing to share stories. So that could be a good way of putting it out there on social. And monitor performance. So set up SMART goals for your hospital. Like, we want to sell this many. We have this many patients coming in for wellness. We want to capture 25% of this. Set some goals for your staff and then measure it. Measure performance, track performance. I mean, if you want to get away from the monetary, you can say, we want to protect this many pets if we're talking about flea and tick, or we want to help this many cats, or we want to help this many dogs with, some of the new products that are coming out for them. And then track it. Don't forget about it. Like, if we set a goal as a team and you set the training up so that we've spoke to the CSRs, techs, and doctors all together, I think setting a goal together that they're all working brings that united team front together as well, which can be really powerful for a hospital. So to kind of recap, we talked about making sure you research your products. Don't just order the product when the doctor stops by your desk and says, get this new product. We want to get the team involved, narrow down the selection. We use our vendors to help educate. We want to make our selections, do some staff training, hands-on, make them go do some role plays if you can, do some marketing, use Canva, it's really easy, and then measure your results and set some goals for your team. I would say this takes time, right? I would love you guys to spend at least 3 months, 3 to 6 months when you launch a new product so that we're actually monitoring our progress. We're talking about it, we're thinking about it. Um, and that just makes this whole thing go so much better. If I do it quick and I don't get the results, it's probably why. If I take my time, I'm gonna actually, I might be a little bit lower here, but then my sales are gonna soar for these products versus, a little bit less time here and then it just tanks and we don't ask those questions, or we have to return the products like my doctor did in my example story. So spend the time, do it right. I think you'll get better results and it'll be a lot more fun for your staff. If you guys have any questions, happy to answer them now, or if you have any other things, you can email me, visit our website, or send an email to me. It's fine.
Cool. Thank you, Tiffany. You mentioned kind of having a plan, all the things that you talked about in the beginning of knowing your market research and doing all the early stuff. And I think at one of my practices was years ago, we got an echocardiogram unit with the intention of doing a lot of echoes. And then
Yeah.
actually it didn't work out so well because the doctors
Yeah.
spent time with interpreting than they thought they would, so we didn't end up using the machine for what we initially did, but then we just used it a lot for ultrasound. So it ended up becoming a revenue source because the other machine we had was old. So it was kind of like a
Mhm.
replace the old machine. So it was different kind of adjustment. So
Right.
how it works. And also with the laser therapy too. I think there was this like, oh my gosh, we're going to cure all the arthritis in the world. And then
Yeah.
we did ish. But we ended up using it with every surgical procedure, every dental, and every time an employee got injured, and this is not a profit revenue source, obviously,
No,
used it to
awfully will use.
fast. So it completely changed how we use the piece of equipment. So the profit share was different, but it still, it helped us in a sense.
Yeah.
We
I
did.
love with equipment. I'm glad you said that, Melissa, real quick, though. I'll just share is if you guys are thinking about a new equipment, talk to your doctors about it. They get really, really excited about it. Then ask for a whole month for them to just tell us how many times they would recommend it.
Mhm.
And we had done the same thing with the Echo because it was kind of like, can we do this? We do have somebody that wants to do it. How many times would we actually recommend it? And then you can start to play with, okay, how much would we charge? When would we hit our return on investment? Is it worth it if we can't hit that return on investment within 12 months or not to the practice at this time? So maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's not right now, or maybe it's a good idea and you're like, yeah, let's do it. We should do it right away. But it gets you thinking about that before you actually have it. Because I've got a lot of dusty equipment over in the corners that we thought we would use that we never did. So
I think everybody has that stuff. I think we even
yeah.
had a CBC checker thing when I first started at my first practice. I don't know how to use it
Yeah.
because we obviously didn't use it at that time. But anyway, yeah, all those old pieces of equipment. So interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
If anyone
For
else has
sure.
questions, feel free to unmute. And if not, then kind of see. I actually Sarah said she can't talk on hers, but she has chat. She can.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Oh, you mentioned having the older folks home, night home. We have Leisure World. So those are the people that may or may not be able to use the technology. I thought that was funny. They have a few different locations down here, so it's kind of fun. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. I guess they don't have any questions, but they're thanking you for your information. So I will
Awesome.
get this uploaded to my YouTube channel, so that everybody that wasn't able to come, because several people registered knowing that they weren't going to be able to attend live, but they'll watch the recording. So we'll get it uploaded
Okay.
for a later time. And
Perfect.
Sarah's asking if we can get a copy of the slides.
Yes, that's fine. You can, if you want to, Melissa, you can share the PDF that
Okay, the one
I
that you gave
sent.
me. Okay, yeah, I have a
Yep.
PDF.
That's
So I'll
perfect.
just share it to everybody who registered. So when I send out the copy of the recording, I will send out the slides to those people who registered as well. You know
Okay.
what, Amy, I am going to work on that. I will get CE credit at some point for these webinars when they can apply. I'll do it through the VHMA. So there's very specific things that the topics need to cover. And obviously this would have been one of those. It just have to figure out the funding for that. So in the future, but I'm sorry, Amy, I don't have a CE certificate for this topic today. But definitely in the future, there will be available. All right, wonderful. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
All right.